The morning sun cast long shadows across Camp Pendleton as Staff Sergeant Maria Rodriguez stepped off the transport truck. Her weathered duffel bag hit the ground with a thud, and she squinted against the California glare. Around her, Marines moved with the practiced efficiency of a well-oiled machine, but their curious glances didn't go unnoticed. Maria had been transferred from a remote forward operating base in Afghanistan, where she'd spent the last 18 months as part of a specialized reconnaissance unit. Her reputation had preceded her, though not necessarily in the way she'd hoped. Word traveled fast in military circles, especially when it involved someone who'd made unconventional choices about their equipment. As she made her way to the armory to check in her personal weapons, Maria could hear the whispered conversations starting behind her. She'd grown accustomed to the stares and comments over the years. Being a female sniper was rare enough, but carrying what many considered an obsolete rifle made her even more of a curiosity. The armory sergeant, a gruff man in his 40s named Thompson, looked up from his paperwork as she approached. "Rodriguez, we've been expecting you." His eyes immediately went to the long case she carried. "That the famous antique I've been hearing about?" Maria set the case down carefully and began entering her combination. "It's not an antique, Sergeant. It's a proven platform that served me well." She opened the case to reveal a pristine M40A1, a rifle that had been the Marine Corps' standard sniper weapon decades ago. Thompson whistled low. "Haven't seen one of those in active use for years. Most folks have moved on to newer systems." He picked up his clipboard. "Says here you've got some impressive stats with that thing, though." The weapon in question was indeed older than most of the technology currently in use. While her peers carried modern rifles with advanced optics, electronic rangefinders, and sophisticated ballistic computers, Maria's M40A1 represented a simpler era. The rifle featured a Remington 700 action, a heavy barrel, and a fixed-power scope that many considered primitive by current standards. "She's been with me for 8 years, Maria said, running her hand along the rifle's stock. "We understand each other." Thompson lobbed the weapon and handed her a receipt. "Well, you'll get a chance to prove that understanding real soon. There's a battalion-wide marksmanship competition next week. All the scouts and snipers are participating." He grinned. "Should be interesting to see how your old-school approach stacks up against the new gear." As Maria left the armory, she could already feel the weight of expectations settling on her shoulders. She'd faced this scenario before, but never in such a concentrated environment. Camp Pendleton was home to some of the Marine Corps' finest marksmen, equipped with the latest technology, and trained on the most advanced techniques. Her first stop was the barracks, where she'd be sharing quarters with other non-commissioned officers. The building was typical military construction, functional but comfortable. As she carried her gear up to her assigned room, she encountered Corporal Jake Williams, a young sniper who'd clearly been waiting for her arrival. "Ma'am, I'm Williams. I've heard a lot about you." His tone was respectful, but carried an undertone of skepticism. "Is it true you still use the old M40? "It's true," Maria replied, setting down her bag. "And please, call me Rodriguez. We're the same rank structure here." Williams nodded, but his expression remained doubtful. "It's just that most of us are using the M40A5 now, or even the Merc 13. The ballistic computers alone make a huge difference in accuracy calculations." Maria had heard this argument countless times. The newer weapon systems did indeed offer technological advantages. They featured better optics, more precise barrels, and integrated systems that could calculate wind drift, bullet drop, and other ballistic factors automatically. To many, her insistence on using older equipment seemed like stubborn nostalgia. "Technology is a tool," she said, beginning to unpack her belongings, "but it's not a substitute for fundamental skills." That afternoon, Maria reported to the sniper section for her initial briefing. The office was filled with Marines of various ranks, all part of the specialized community that formed the backbone of the Corps' precision shooting capability. Maps covered the walls, showing various ranges and training areas throughout the base. Gunnery Sergeant Patterson, the section leader, was a tall man with graying hair and the weathered look of someone who'd spent years in demanding environments. He looked up as Maria entered and gestured to a chair. "Rodriguez, good to have you aboard. I've read your file, and I'm impressed." He leaned back in his chair. 47 confirmed kills in Afghanistan, excellent marks on all your evaluations. But I have to ask about the rifle choice. Maria had expected this conversation. Sir, I understand the curiosity. The M40A1 has limitations compared to newer systems, but it's also proven reliable in every environment I've encountered. I've made modifications over the years, worked with armorers to optimize its performance, and I know every aspect of its ballistics. Patterson nodded slowly. I appreciate tradition, but we use current equipment for a reason. The technological improvements aren't just fancy additions. They provide real tactical advantages. I agree, sir. But I've also seen Marines become overly dependent on those systems. When the electronics fail or the battery dies, fundamental shooting skills become critical. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Sergeant First Class Davis, another sniper who'd been at Pendleton for several years. He was carrying a rifle case of his own and wore the confident expression of someone accustomed to being among the best in his field. "This the Marine with the museum piece?" Davis asked, his tone clearly dismissive. "I've been hearing stories about someone still using Vietnam-era equipment." Maria felt her jaw tighten, but she kept her voice level. The M40A1 was introduced in the 1970s, so technically it's post-Vietnam, and it's hardly a museum piece when it's still capable of putting rounds on target. Davis laughed. Capable, maybe, but why handicap yourself? My M40A5 can make shots that old rifle can't even dream of. The ballistic computer alone gives me a significant advantage in variable conditions. The computer calculates what a trained sniper should already know, Maria replied. Wind reading, range estimation, ballistic compensation, these are fundamental skills that shouldn't require electronic assistance. The room had grown quiet, and Maria realized that several other Marines had gathered to listen to the exchange. She could see a mixture of curiosity and skepticism in their faces. Some seemed genuinely interested in her perspective, while others appeared to share Davis's dismissive attitude. Gunnery Sergeant Patterson raised his hand to stop the developing argument. "Gentlemen, lady, save it for the range. You'll all have plenty of opportunity to demonstrate your capabilities next week." As the briefing concluded, Maria found herself walking back to the barracks with mixed feelings. She'd encountered resistance before, but the concentrated skepticism here was more intense than she'd expected. The upcoming competition would be more than just a marksmanship test. It would be a validation of her approach to precision shooting. That evening, she cleaned and inspected her rifle in the quiet of her room. The weapon showed its age in subtle ways: wear marks on the receiver, slight discoloration where her hands gripped the stock, but its mechanical condition was flawless. She'd invested thousands of hours in maintenance and refinement, working with skilled armorers to optimize every component. The scope, a Leupold Mark IV that she'd purchased with her own money years ago, was fixed at 10-power magnification. Unlike the variable power optics used by most modern snipers, it couldn't be adjusted for different situations, but Maria had learned to work within its limitations, developing techniques that maximized its effectiveness. Her ammunition was equally traditional. While many snipers used specialized match-grade rounds with exotic bullet designs, Maria relied on standard M11, 8 LARAA ammunition. She'd spent years learning the precise ballistic characteristics of this cartridge from her specific rifle, creating detailed data books that recorded performance under various conditions. A knock on her door interrupted her maintenance routine. She opened it to find Corporal Williams, the young Marine she'd met earlier. He looked somewhat embarrassed but determined. "Rodriguez, I wanted to apologize for earlier. I didn't mean to sound disrespectful." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "It's just that I've never met anyone who chooses to use older equipment when better options are available." Maria invited him in and gestured to a chair. "No apology necessary. You asked a fair question." She continued working on her rifle as she spoke. "Tell me about your experience. How long have you been a sniper?" Williams settled into the chair, his posture relaxing slightly. 2 years now. Went through the basic course at Quantico, then advanced training here. I've got the M40A5 with a Schmidt & Bender scope, laser rangefinder, ballistic computer, all the latest equipment. And how do you like it? It's amazing. I can make calculations in seconds that would take minutes with traditional methods. The computer accounts for atmospheric conditions, cant angle, even Coriolis effect on long shots. It's made me a much more effective marksman." Maria nodded thoughtfully. Those are impressive capabilities. But tell me, what happens when the system fails? Williams looked puzzled. Fails? The equipment is very reliable. I've never had a problem. Electronics always fail eventually, Maria said, setting down her cleaning rod. Battery contacts corrode, circuit boards crack from shock, temperature extremes affect performance. When that happens, what's your backup plan? The young Marine was quiet for a moment. I guess I'd have to rely on basic skills. Range estimation, wind reading, manual calculations. Exactly. And how confident are you in those basic skills? Williams's hesitation was answer enough. Maria could see him processing the implications of her question. Like many young snipers, he'd learned to shoot with advanced equipment from the beginning. The fundamental skills that had been essential for previous generations were often treated as backup knowledge rather than core competencies. That's why I stick with simpler equipment, Maria continued. Every shot requires me to read wind, estimate range, calculate holdover manually. Those skills stay sharp because I use them constantly. Their conversation was interrupted by loud voices from the hallway. Through the thin walls, they could hear Davis talking to a group of Marines about the upcoming competition. I'm telling you, it's going to be embarrassing, Davis was saying. Someone needs to explain to her that this isn't a historical reenactment. We're supposed to be using the best available equipment, not playing with antiques. Williams looked uncomfortable. He's not speaking for all of us, he said quietly. Maria shrugged. Davis is entitled to his opinion, and he might be right. Modern equipment does offer real advantages in many situations. Then why not use it? Because advantages come with costs, Maria replied. The more complex a system becomes, the more points of failure it has. The more automated the process becomes, the less the operator understands the fundamentals. I've seen too many situations where Marines with advanced equipment couldn't adapt when conditions fell outside their system's parameters. As Williams left, Maria returned to her rifle maintenance. The weapon represented more than just a tool to her. It embodied a philosophy about the relationship between shooter and equipment. She believed that true expertise came from understanding every aspect of the shooting process, not from relying on technology to compensate for gaps in knowledge. The next morning brought the first of several training sessions, designed to prepare for the competition. Maria joined her new unit at the 1,000-yard range, where Marines were practicing long-distance precision shooting. The sound of rifle fire echoed across the valley as dozens of snipers worked on their techniques. As she set up her shooting position, Maria became aware of the subtle competition already beginning. Marines were comparing equipment, discussing modifications, and evaluating each other's setups. Her M40A1 drew curious looks and whispered comments. Staff Sergeant Morrison, a veteran sniper with multiple deployments, approached as she was adjusting her bipod. Rodriguez? I'm Morrison. Heard you served with the 2nd Raycon out in Helmand Province. That's right. Good people out there. Morrison nodded. Lost some friends in that area. Heard you provided overwatch for several operations. His tone was respectful, focusing on her service record rather than her equipment choices. Did what I could, Maria replied. It's a challenging environment for precision work. No kidding. Dust storms, temperature swings, limited intelligence on targets. Morrison glanced at her rifle. Must have been interesting using that platform in those conditions. For the first time since arriving, Maria felt like someone was giving her a fair assessment. Morrison's questions were professional, focused on tactical applications rather than equipment criticism. The M40A1 actually handled those conditions well, she said. Simple, robust design. Less affected by dust infiltration than some of the more complex systems. As the training session progressed, Maria began to demonstrate the capabilities that had made her reputation. Her shots were consistent, her form was textbook perfect, and her ability to read environmental conditions impressed even the skeptics. But she also became aware of the genuine capabilities of the modern equipment around her. Davis, despite his abrasive personality, was undeniably skilled. His shots were accurate, and his use of the ballistic computer allowed him to quickly adapt to changing conditions. Williams and the other young Marines showed impressive technical proficiency with their advanced systems. The competition, Maria realized, would be closer than either side expected. Technology versus tradition, automation versus fundamental skills. Next week would provide the answer to which approach would prove superior when it mattered most. The days leading up to the competition intensified the atmosphere around Camp Pendleton's sniper section. Maria found herself caught between two worlds, the respect earned through her combat experience and the skepticism surrounding her equipment choices. Every training session became an informal preview of the coming contest. Tuesday morning brought Maria to the 600-yard range for precision shooting practice. The facility was state-of-the-art, with electronic targets that provided instant feedback and environmental monitoring systems that tracked wind speed, temperature, and humidity in real time. As she settled into her shooting position, she noticed Davis setting up 2 lanes over. His rifle was a work of art in its own way. The M40A5 featured a modular stock system, a heavy stainless steel barrel, and a scope that cost more than most people's monthly salary. Attached to the rifle were various electronic devices, a laser rangefinder, a ballistic computer, and an environmental sensor package that automatically fed data to his targeting system. "Must be nice to have all that technology doing the thinking for you," Maria muttered under her breath, immediately regretting the comment. She prided herself on professionalism, and petty remarks weren't her style. Davis apparently heard her anyway. "At least I'm not stuck in the Stone Age," he called back. "Some of us believe in using every advantage available." The exchange drew attention from other Marines on the range. Maria could see them watching, waiting to see how this brewing rivalry would play out. She decided to let her shooting do the talking and focused on her first target. The morning conditions were challenging. A gusty crosswind was shifting direction every few minutes, and heat mirages were beginning to rise from the desert floor. These were exactly the kinds of conditions where experience and fundamental skills could make the difference. Maria began her shooting routine, a methodical process she'd refined over years of practice. First, she observed the wind indicators, flags, vegetation movement, and the behavior of dust or debris in the air. She noted the mirage patterns and estimated wind speed and direction at various points between her position and the target. Next, she checked her range card, a detailed diagram showing distances to various landmarks and reference points. While Davis used his laser rangefinder to get precise digital measurements, Maria relied on terrain features and her trained eye to estimate range. It was slower but built skills that would work even if technology failed. Her first shot was a solid hit in the 9 ring. Not perfect, but respectable given the conditions. She made a note in her data book recording wind conditions, temperature, and her point of impact. This information would be valuable for future shots under similar conditions. Davis fired his first shot moments later. The electronic target system immediately displayed the result. A perfect X-ring hit, dead center. Several Marines nodded approvingly, and Davis looked pleased with himself. "Guess that settles the question about which approach works better," he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. Maria fired her second shot, adjusting for the wind shift she'd observed after Davis's shot. Another 9-ring hit, this one closer to center. She was finding her rhythm, but Davis was clearly ahead in terms of pure accuracy. The pattern continued for the next several shots. Davis used his electronic systems to quickly calculate precise adjustments, consistently placing shots in the X ring or close to it. Maria's shots were good but not quite at the same level, and she could sense the growing perception that modern equipment was simply superior. Corporal Williams was shooting on the other side of Maria, and she could see his struggle with the changing conditions. His ballistic computer was providing calculations, but he wasn't reading the wind correctly. His shots were scattered across the target, and his frustration was becoming evident. "Williams," Maria called softly, "look at the flags again. See how the one at 300 yards is doing something different from the one at 500? The young Marine studied the range more carefully. "And, yeah, the near flag is showing wind from the left, but the far one is almost calm." "Right. Your computer is probably averaging the wind speed, but the bullet will experience both conditions. You need to read the wind in segments and make adjustments accordingly." Williams nodded and took more time observing before his next shot. The result was significantly better, landing in the 8 ring instead of scattered around the edges. Davis had been listening to the exchange. "That's exactly why the new systems are better," he said. "They account for wind variation automatically. No guesswork involved." "But what if the system is wrong?" Maria asked. "What if it's reading data that doesn't reflect the actual conditions the bullet will encounter?" The sensors are extremely accurate, Davis replied confidently. More accurate than human observation. As if to prove his point, Davis fired another shot that landed dead center. His consistency was impressive, and Maria had to admit that his equipment was performing as advertised. But she also noticed something else. Davis was becoming increasingly dependent on his displays and readouts, rarely looking at the actual environmental indicators. The morning session ended with Davis clearly ahead in terms of accuracy. As Marines packed up their equipment, conversations naturally turned to the upcoming competition. The consensus seemed to be that modern equipment would dominate, and Maria's traditional approach would be proven outdated. But Maria wasn't discouraged. She'd been in similar situations before, and she understood that controlled range conditions didn't always translate to real-world performance. Combat shooting involved variables that couldn't be replicated on a pristine firing line. That afternoon, she received an unexpected visitor. Master Sergeant Kelly, a legendary figure in the Marine sniper community, appeared at her barracks room. Kelly had served multiple combat tours and was renowned for his expertise in training and tactics. His presence commanded immediate respect. "Rodriguez, I've been hearing interesting things about you," Kelly said as he settled into the room's single chair. "Mind if we talk?" Maria felt honored by the visit. Kelly's reputation preceded him, and his opinion carried significant weight in the sniper community. "Of course, Master Sergeant. What can I help you with?" "I'm curious about your equipment choice," Kelly said, glancing at the rifle case. "I started my career with the M40A1 myself, back when it was the standard platform. Good rifle, but that was a long time ago." Maria opened the case and displayed her rifle. Kelly examined it with the practiced eye of someone who understood precision weapons intimately. He noted the modifications she'd made, the quality of the maintenance, and the wear patterns that told the story of extensive use. "You've done good work on this," Kelly said approvingly. "Custom barrel work, trigger job, stock modifications. This isn't just a preserved antique, it's a seriously optimized weapon system." "Thank you, Master Sergeant. I put a lot of time into getting it exactly right." Kelly continued his examination. "I can see that. But I have to ask the obvious question, why not use modern equipment? You could take all this expertise and apply it to a current platform." Maria had given this question considerable thought over the years. "Partly its familiarity," she said. "I know every aspect of this rifle's behavior. But it's also philosophical. I believe that fundamental skills are more important than technological advantages." "Explain that." "When I was deployed in Afghanistan, I saw Marines with advanced equipment who couldn't make shots when their systems failed or when conditions fell outside normal parameters. They'd become dependent on technology instead of developing their own capabilities." Kelly nodded thoughtfully. "I've seen that too. But I've also seen situations where advanced equipment made the difference between mission success and failure." "Absolutely," Maria agreed. "I'm not anti-technology, but I think technology should enhance human capabilities, not replace them. When a sniper understands every aspect of ballistics, wind reading, and range estimation, they can use any platform effectively. When they depend on automation, they're vulnerable if that automation fails." Their conversation was interrupted by a knock on the door. Davis appeared, apparently looking for Kelly. When he saw the two of them together, his expression showed surprise and perhaps concern. "Master Sergeant, I didn't know you were here," Davis said. "I wanted to discuss some equipment upgrades for the competition." Kelly's expression remained neutral. "What kind of upgrades?" "New ballistic software, improved sensors, maybe authorization to use the MK13 system instead of the M40A5. Davis glanced at Maria's rifle dismissively. "I want to make sure we're showing the full capability of modern equipment." "The competition is supposed to test Marines, not equipment," Kelly replied. "But we'll discuss your suggestions later." He turned back to Maria. "Rodriguez, I'd like to observe some of your training sessions this week. I'm curious to see your techniques in action." After the two men left, Maria felt a mixture of anticipation and pressure. Having Kelly's attention could be beneficial, but it also meant increased scrutiny. Every aspect of her performance would be evaluated by one of the most respected figures in the sniper community. Wednesday brought a new challenge: moving target practice. The range featured pop-up targets at various distances, designed to simulate the dynamic conditions of combat engagement. This was where the differences between equipment philosophies would become more apparent. Maria arrived early to study the range layout and identify reference points. Without a laser rangefinder, she needed to pre-calculate distances to various positions where targets might appear. She sketched a rough range card, noting landmarks and estimated distances. Davis and several other Marines arrived shortly after, their equipment bags bulging with electronic devices. They spent time calibrating their systems and programming target data into their ballistic computers. The contrast in preparation methods was stark. The exercise began with targets appearing at random intervals at distances from 300 to 800 yards. Marines had limited time to identify, range, and engage each target before it disappeared. This simulated the time pressure of combat situations. Maria's first target appeared at approximately 500 yards. She quickly estimated the range using terrain features, read the wind indicators, and calculated her holdover. The shot was fired within 8 seconds and resulted in a solid hit. Not perfect, but effective. Davis engaged the same type of target when it appeared in his lane. His laser rangefinder provided instant distance measurement, his ballistic computer calculated the precise firing solution, and he delivered a perfect center hit in 6 seconds. His technology was clearly providing an advantage in speed and accuracy. But as the exercise continued, interesting patterns emerged. When targets appeared at predictable distances in good lighting, Davis and the other Marines with advanced equipment consistently outperformed Maria. Their systems allowed for rapid, precise engagements. However, when targets appeared partially obscured at unusual angles or in poor lighting conditions, the advantages became less clear. Maria's experience in reading terrain and estimating distances under difficult conditions proved valuable. Her shots remained consistent even when electronic systems struggled to get accurate readings. Master Sergeant Kelly observed the exercise from the tower, taking notes and occasionally speaking into his radio. Maria could see him paying particular attention to her techniques, but his expression remained unreadable. After the exercise, Kelly approached her position. "Interesting performance out there," he said. "Your times were slower on most targets, but your hit percentage remained consistent throughout." "The electronic systems definitely provide speed advantages," Maria acknowledged. "But they also have limitations when conditions aren't ideal." Kelly nodded. "I noticed that. Several Marines had trouble when the laser rangefinders couldn't get solid returns on partially obscured targets." He paused, studying her rifle. "Your manual calculations seem to work regardless of conditions." That afternoon, word spread through the sniper section that Kelly was planning something special for the competition. Instead of a standard marksmanship test, he was designing a comprehensive evaluation that would test multiple skills under various conditions. The rumors created additional tension among the Marines. Some welcomed the challenge, seeing it as an opportunity to demonstrate their complete skill set. Others, particularly those who had focused heavily on equipment-based techniques, seemed concerned about the implications. Maria found herself in an interesting position. The enhanced scope of the competition might favor her approach, but it would also increase expectations. If she failed to perform well in a test designed to showcase fundamental skills, it would be particularly damaging to her credibility. Thursday's training focused on fieldcraft and stalking skills. This was an area where equipment differences were less important than basic military skills and patience. Marines had to move undetected across open terrain, establish shooting positions, and engage targets without being spotted by observers. The exercise highlighted another aspect of sniper training that often got overlooked in discussions about equipment. Shooting accurately was only part of the job. Marines also needed to be invisible, patient, and tactically smart. These skills couldn't be purchased or programmed. Maria excelled in this environment. Her experience in Afghanistan had taught her patience and stealth that couldn't be replicated on a firing line. She moved carefully, used terrain effectively, and established positions that were nearly impossible to detect. Davis, despite his shooting prowess, struggled with the stalking portion. His movement was too aggressive, his positions too obvious. When observers spotted him before he could engage his target, his advanced rifle system provided no advantage. Friday brought the final preparation day before the competition. Kelly gathered all the participating Marines for a briefing that would outline the exact format and scoring system. The assembled group represented some of the finest marksmen in the Marine Corps, each confident in their abilities but uncertain about how the test would unfold. "Gentlemen, lady," Kelly began, "tomorrow's competition will test every aspect of sniper skills. We'll have precision shooting at various distances, moving targets, field craft, and some surprises I won't spoil for you. He outlined a point system that would weight different skills equally. Pure accuracy would be important, but so would speed, adaptability, and tactical performance. No single aspect would dominate the scoring. I want to emphasize, Kelly continued, that this competition is about Marines, not equipment. You'll be tested on your fundamental skills, your ability to adapt to changing conditions, and your tactical judgment. The best gear in the world won't help if you don't understand the basics. Davis raised his hand. Master Sergeant, will we be allowed to use all our equipment? Some of us have invested significant time in learning advanced systems. You'll use your assigned weapons and whatever equipment you normally carry, Kelly replied. But remember that the scenarios may include situations where electronic systems are compromised or unavailable. As the briefing ended, Maria felt both nervous and excited. The competition would finally answer the questions that had been debated all week. Would experience and fundamental skills prove more valuable than technological advantages? Would her traditional approach be vindicated or proven obsolete? That evening, she performed a final, detailed inspection of her rifle. Every component was checked, cleaned, and verified. Her ammunition was sorted and organized. Her data books were reviewed and updated. She felt as prepared as possible for whatever tomorrow would bring. The stakes had grown beyond personal validation. The outcome would influence how the Marine Corps thought about equipment procurement, training priorities, and the balance between technology and fundamental skills. Tomorrow would determine whether the old ways still had value in a modern military. Dawn arrived gray and cold over Camp Pendleton, with marine layer clouds hanging low over the ranges. Maria woke before her alarm, her mind already focused on the day ahead. The competition would begin at 0800, and she wanted time to prepare mentally and physically for what promised to be the most challenging test of her career. As she made her way to the armory to retrieve her rifle, she encountered other Marines moving with the same purposeful energy. Conversations were muted, faces serious. Everyone understood that today would be more than just a competition. It would be a defining moment for how the Marine Corps viewed the balance between traditional skills and modern technology. The first event was announced as they gathered at the 1,000-yard range. Master Sergeant Kelly stood before the assembled Marines, his expression revealing nothing about what lay ahead. Behind him, targets had been set up at various distances, but something was different about the usual range configuration. Marines, your first challenge is precision shooting at unknown distances, Kelly announced. No laser rangefinders permitted. No ballistic computers. You'll rely on your ability to estimate range, read wind, and calculate firing solutions manually. A murmur of concern rippled through the group. Several Marines looked uncomfortable, realizing that their advanced equipment had just been rendered useless. Davis's confidence seemed to waver for the first time since Maria had met him. You'll have 5 minutes to study the range and identify your targets, Kelly continued. Then you'll have one shot at each of 5 targets at distances from 400 to 1,000 yards. Points will be awarded based on accuracy and time between shots. Maria felt a surge of optimism. This was exactly the kind of test where her fundamental skills would be valuable. While others had relied heavily on electronic aids, she had continued to practice manual range estimation and wind reading as core competencies. She spent her 5 minutes carefully studying the terrain between her position and the targets. Using techniques learned over years of practice, she identified reference points and estimated distances based on the apparent size of known objects, the clarity of details, and terrain features. Her range estimations wouldn't be as precise as a laser measurement, but they would be close enough for effective shooting. The wind was tricky, shifting direction and intensity across the range. Maria observed vegetation movement, dust patterns, and the behavior of the flags placed at various distances. She noted differences in wind conditions at different ranges and began planning her hold-off adjustments. When the shooting began, the differences in approach became immediately apparent. Marines who had relied heavily on electronic systems struggled with manual calculations. Some took excessive time trying to estimate ranges, while others rushed their shots and missed badly. Davis, despite his earlier confidence, seemed uncertain without his ballistic computer. His first shot at the 400-yard target was a miss, hitting low and left. The crowd of observing Marines remained respectfully quiet, but the significance of the miss wasn't lost on anyone. Maria stepped up to the firing line for her first shot. The target was at approximately 450 yards, with a moderate crosswind from the left. Using her practiced technique, she estimated a 2-minute hold-off for wind and aimed accordingly. The shot felt good as it broke, and she was rewarded with an X-ring hit. Her confidence built with each subsequent shot. The 600-yard target required more careful wind reading due to different conditions at that distance, but her experience served her well. Another solid hit. The 750-yard shot was the most challenging, with swirling winds and heat mirage affecting visibility, but she managed a 9-ring hit. By the time she reached the 1,000-yard target, Maria had found her rhythm. This was the shot that would make the biggest statement. The target appeared small at that distance, and the wind conditions were complex, with different speeds and directions at various points along the bullet's path. She took her time, reading the wind indicators methodically and calculating her hold-off carefully. The shot felt perfect as it broke, and through her scope she could see the bullet impact in the 10-ring. Not perfect, but a solid hit under challenging conditions. When the first event concluded, Maria had achieved 4 hits in the 9-ring or better out of 5 shots. Several other Marines had performed well, but many struggled without their electronic aids. Davis managed only 2 solid hits, clearly frustrated by his inability to adapt quickly to manual calculations. The scores were posted, and Maria found herself near the top of the leaderboard. Corporal Williams had performed better than expected, his fundamental skills proving stronger than he'd realized. Several Marines with the most advanced equipment found themselves in the lower half of the standings. The second event was announced, timed fire at moving targets. This would test not only accuracy, but also the ability to quickly establish firing solutions under time pressure. The twist was that Marines would be required to engage targets while moving between firing positions themselves. This scenario more closely replicated combat conditions, where snipers often needed to relocate quickly and engage targets of opportunity. Static precision shooting, while important, represented only part of the sniper's mission requirements. The course was laid out with 5 firing positions at different elevations and angles. Marines would move from position to position, engaging pop-up targets that appeared for limited time windows. The challenge was to maintain accuracy while dealing with the physical stress of movement and changing positions. Maria understood that this event would test different skills than the pure precision shooting of the first event. Physical fitness, the ability to quickly establish stable shooting positions, and mental discipline under stress would all be factors. As she moved through the course, Maria's training and experience showed clearly. Her movement between positions was efficient, and she established stable shooting positions quickly. Her shots were delivered with calm precision despite the time pressure and physical demands of the exercise. The targets appeared at ranges from 200 to 600 yards, requiring quick range estimation and firing solution calculations. Maria's manual methods actually proved advantageous here, as she didn't need to wait for electronic systems to provide readings before engaging. Davis struggled more with this event. His reliance on electronic aids meant that he needed time to get laser range readings and ballistic computer solutions for each target. By the time his systems provided firing solutions, several targets had already disappeared. His frustration was becoming evident. Other Marines showed varying levels of success. Those who had maintained basic skills alongside their advanced equipment adapted well. Marines who had become too dependent on technology found themselves at a significant disadvantage. Master Sergeant Kelly observed each Marine's performance carefully, taking detailed notes. Maria could see him paying particular attention to how different Marines adapted to the stress and time pressure of the exercise. When the second event concluded, the leaderboard showed interesting changes. Marines with strong fundamental skills had risen in the standings, while some who had dominated the static precision shooting struggles with the dynamic requirements. Maria maintained her position near the top with consistent performance across both events. Williams continued to improve, clearly gaining confidence as he relied more on basic skills. Davis had dropped significantly in the standings, his advanced equipment providing little advantage in the fast-paced environment. The third event was announced as field craft and stalking. Marines would need to move undetected across open terrain to establish concealed firing positions and engage targets without being spotted by observers. This was pure military skill, with equipment playing a minimal role. The exercise area was a mile-square section of typical Southern California terrain, rolling hills, scattered vegetation, and multiple observation points manned by experienced Marines acting as enemy observers. The challenge was to reach designated firing positions without detection and engage assigned targets. Maria excelled in this environment. Her experience in Afghanistan had taught her patience and stealth that couldn't be replicated in classroom training. She moved slowly and deliberately, using terrain features and natural concealment to remain invisible to the observers. Her shooting position was established with careful attention to background, shadow, and angles of observation. When she finally engaged her assigned target at 600 yards, the shot was delivered from a position so well concealed that observers had difficulty locating her even after the muzzle flash. This was the kind of scenario where advanced optics and ballistic computers provided no advantage over fundamental military skills. Success depended on fieldcraft, patience, and tactical understanding, rather than technological superiority. Davis struggled significantly with the stalking portion. His movement was too aggressive, and his position selection showed limited understanding of concealment principles. When observers spotted him before he could engage his target, his advanced rifle system couldn't compensate for tactical mistakes. Several other Marines performed well in this event, demonstrating that basic military skills remained relevant regardless of equipment preferences. The event highlighted the importance of complete sniper training rather than focusing exclusively on marksmanship. As the fieldcraft event concluded, the leaderboard showed Maria maintaining her strong position. Her consistent performance across all three events demonstrated the value of balanced skill development. Davis continued to slide in the standings, his early confidence replaced by visible frustration. The fourth event was announced with a twist that surprised everyone: night shooting with limited visibility equipment. Marines would engage targets in low-light conditions using only basic night vision equipment, not the advanced thermal optics that some had trained with extensively. This scenario tested adaptability and fundamental shooting skills under challenging conditions. Advanced ballistic computers were less useful when Marines couldn't clearly see wind indicators or environmental conditions. Success would depend on experience, instinct, and the ability to make accurate estimates with limited information. Maria approached the night shooting with confidence. Her rifle's simple but reliable scope worked effectively with the issued night vision equipment, and her experience with manual calculations meant she could adapt quickly to the reduced visibility conditions. The targets were positioned at various distances in a valley below the firing positions. Ambient light was minimal, and Marines had to rely primarily on their night vision equipment to identify and engage targets. Wind estimation became more challenging without visual reference points, requiring Marines to rely on subtle cues and experience. Maria's first target appeared as a faint silhouette at approximately 400 yards. Using her night vision equipment, she identified the target and estimated range based on apparent size and terrain features. Wind estimation required more guesswork than usual, but her experience helped her make reasonable estimates. Her shot resulted in a solid hit, confirming that her manual techniques worked effectively even under degraded conditions. The second target at 600 yards proved more challenging, requiring careful observation to distinguish it from background vegetation. Again, her shot was effective. Davis struggled more with the night shooting. His advanced optics weren't optimized for the basic night vision equipment being used, and his ballistic computer required environmental data that was difficult to obtain in low-light conditions. His shots were less accurate than usual, further damaging his position in the competition. Other Marines showed varying levels of success with the night shooting. Those who had practiced extensively with night vision equipment performed better, but the limitations of the equipment meant that technological advantages were minimized. As the fourth event concluded, Maria had solidified her position among the top competitors. Her ability to maintain consistent performance across diverse conditions was proving the value of fundamental skills and adaptable techniques. The final event was announced as a surprise scenario that would test everything: precision shooting under simulated combat stress. Marines would engage multiple targets at various distances while dealing with distractions, time pressure, and physical challenges designed to replicate the stress of actual combat. The scenario involved engaging targets while wearing full combat equipment, after completing a physical challenge course, and while dealing with simulated artillery bombardment using loudspeakers and smoke generators. This was designed to test performance under maximum stress conditions. Maria understood that this final event would determine the competition outcome. All the technical skills in the world wouldn't matter if a Marine couldn't perform under extreme stress. This was where experience, mental discipline, and fundamental training would be most important. As she prepared for the final event, Maria felt confident in her preparation and approach. The competition had validated her belief in fundamental skills while also demonstrating the continuing importance of complete sniper training. Tomorrow's conclusion would determine whether her philosophy would be vindicated or if modern technology would ultimately prove superior. The assembled Marines prepared for the final challenge, each knowing that everything they had trained for would be tested in the most demanding scenario they had yet faced. The outcome would influence not just personal reputations, but the future direction of Marine Corps sniper training and equipment procurement. The final event began at 1500 under increasingly difficult conditions. Storm clouds had moved in from the Pacific, bringing gusty winds and intermittent light rain that would challenge even the most experienced marksman. Master Sergeant Kelly had designed this culminating test to push every Marine beyond their comfort zone. Marines, this final scenario simulates combat conditions as closely as possible without live enemy fire, Kelly announced over the growing wind. You'll move through a 1-mile course under simulated artillery bombardment, establish multiple firing positions, and engage targets at ranges from 300 to 1,200 yards, all while carrying full combat load. The assembled snipers stood in their full gear: flak jackets, helmets, combat packs weighing 40 pounds, and their individual weapon systems. Maria felt the familiar weight of combat equipment. Memories of Afghanistan flooding back. This was the kind of test where training met reality. Electronic equipment failures will be simulated randomly throughout the exercise, Kelly continued. Some of you will find your advanced systems non-functional at critical moments. This tests your ability to adapt when technology fails. Davis shifted uncomfortably, clearly concerned about the implications. His entire shooting methodology relied heavily on his electronic systems. Without them, he would be forced to rely on skills he had practiced less frequently. The course began with a grueling obstacle course designed to induce physical fatigue and stress. Marines crawled under wire, climbed walls, and carried heavy equipment across broken terrain. The purpose was to replicate the physical demands of combat movement before requiring precision shooting. Maria's military fitness served her well. Years of maintaining peak physical condition meant she handled the obstacles efficiently, conserving energy for the shooting portions ahead. Her experience moving with heavy equipment in Afghanistan gave her advantages in pacing and technique that some younger Marines lacked. As she completed the obstacle course, loudspeakers began broadcasting the sounds of artillery bombardment and small arms fire. The psychological effect was immediate and intense. Combined with physical fatigue from the obstacles, the simulated combat environment created genuine stress that would test every Marine's mental discipline. The first shooting position required engaging targets at 300 and 500 yards while lying prone in a muddy depression. The position offered good concealment but poor comfort, and the approaching rain had made the ground slippery and uncomfortable. Maria established her position methodically, using techniques learned in actual combat zones. Her first target appeared through the artificial smoke and noise. The 300-yard shot should have been routine, but the combination of physical stress, environmental conditions, and simulated combat pressure made everything more challenging. She controlled her breathing, read the shifting wind conditions, and delivered a solid hit. The 500-yard target required more careful calculation. The wind was gusting unpredictably, and the rain was beginning to affect visibility. Maria took her time, waiting for a lull in the wind before firing. Another good hit, confirming that her fundamental skills remained reliable under stress. Davis reached the first firing position shortly after Maria completed her engagement. She could see him struggling with the wet conditions and the weight of his electronic equipment. When he attempted to use his laser rangefinder, the device appeared to malfunction. Apparently, one of the simulated equipment failures Kelly had mentioned. Without his electronic aids, Davis struggled to estimate range and calculate firing solutions quickly. His first shot missed badly, and his second required multiple attempts to hit the target. The stress of equipment failure and time pressure was clearly affecting his performance. The second firing position required a sprint across open ground while carrying full equipment. This movement phase was designed to increase physical stress and test Marines' ability to transition quickly between positions under pressure. Maria moved efficiently, using terrain features to minimize exposure while maintaining speed. Her experience in combat zones had taught her how to move quickly, with heavy equipment, while conserving energy for precision tasks. She reached the second position breathing hard but still capable of effective shooting. The targets at this position were at 700 and 900 yards, requiring more sophisticated ballistic calculations. The weather conditions had worsened, with steady rain and gusting winds that made environmental reading extremely challenging. This was exactly the kind of scenario where advanced equipment should have provided significant advantages. However, as Maria settled into her firing position, she heard Davis cursing nearby. His ballistic computer had also failed, leaving him without the automated calculations he relied upon. Several other Marines were experiencing similar equipment problems, forcing them to rely on manual techniques they had practiced less extensively. Maria's manual approach proved advantageous under these conditions. She had never depended on electronic systems, so their absence didn't disrupt her shooting process. She carefully observed wind indicators, estimated range using terrain features, and calculated hold-off adjustments based on years of experience. Her 700-yard shot was more challenging than expected. The wind was changing direction frequently, and the rain was affecting visibility through her scope. She waited for optimal conditions, controlled her breathing, and delivered a hit in the 8-ring. Not perfect, but solid given the circumstances. The 900-yard target represented her longest shot of the competition. At this distance, small errors in calculation or execution would result in complete misses. The environmental conditions made precise shooting extremely difficult, requiring all her experience and skill. Maria took extra time to read the conditions carefully. The wind was strongest at mid-range, requiring complex calculations to account for its effect on bullet trajectory. The rain was intermittent but could affect bullet performance when it was heaviest. She waited for the optimal moment and fired. Through her scope, she could see the bullet impact in the 9-ring. An excellent hit under challenging conditions that demonstrated the effectiveness of fundamental skills when conditions degraded beyond the capabilities of electronic aids. The third and final firing position required another movement phase, this time uphill through rough terrain while simulated artillery continued overhead. The psychological pressure was intense, designed to test Marines' ability to maintain focus and precision under extreme stress. By this point, many Marines were showing signs of fatigue and stress. The combination of physical demands, equipment failures, and environmental challenges was taking its toll. Some who had started strong were beginning to struggle with the cumulative effects of the exercise. Maria reached the final position feeling tired but still focused. This was familiar territory for her, the kind of demanding conditions where training and experience mattered most. The final targets would be at maximum range, 1,000 and 1,200 yards, the ultimate test of precision shooting under adverse conditions. The 1,200-yard target was particularly challenging. At that distance, environmental factors became critical, and small errors in calculation would result in significant misses. The wind conditions remained unstable, and the rain was affecting visibility. This shot would separate the truly skilled from those who had relied too heavily on technological aids. Maria spent several minutes observing conditions and planning her shot. She noted wind patterns at different distances, calculated bullet drop compensation, and estimated the effects of the rain on bullet performance. This was the kind of complex analysis that electronic systems were designed to handle automatically, but her manual calculations would have to suffice. Her shooting position was stable, her breathing controlled. She waited for a brief lull in the wind and fired. The shot felt good, but at 1,200 yards it would take almost 2 seconds for the bullet to reach the target. She watched through her scope as the bullet impacted in the target's 8-ring, a remarkable hit under the conditions. The 1,000-yard shot should have been easier, but fatigue and the pressure of the competition were affecting everyone. Maria forced herself to maintain the same methodical approach, carefully reading conditions and calculating her firing solution. This shot resulted in a 9-ring hit, confirming her ability to maintain precision under stress. As other Marines completed their final shots, the results became clear. Those who had maintained fundamental skills throughout their careers were performing better under the degraded conditions. Marines who had become too dependent on electronic aids were struggling when forced to rely on basic techniques. Davis managed to complete the course, but his performance deteriorated significantly after his equipment failures. His frustration was evident, and his final scores reflected his inability to adapt quickly when technology wasn't available. Corporal Williams surprised many by performing well in the final stages. His fundamental skills proved stronger than expected, and his ability to adapt to manual calculations improved throughout the exercise. The competition had revealed capabilities he hadn't known he possessed. When the final event concluded, Marines gathered around the scoring station to await results. The competition had tested every aspect of sniper skills: precision, adaptability, fieldcraft, and performance under stress. The outcome would determine not just individual rankings, but the validity of different approaches to sniper training and equipment. Master Sergeant Kelly reviewed the scorecards carefully before announcing results. The assembled Marines waited in tense silence, understanding that the outcome would influence future training and equipment decisions throughout the Marine Corps. Marines, this competition has demonstrated several important points, Kelly began. First, that technology is a valuable tool when it works properly. Second, that fundamental skills remain essential when technology fails. And third, that the best snipers are those who master both approaches. The final standings reflected these lessons. Marines who had balanced technological capabilities with strong fundamental skills performed best overall. Those who had relied too heavily on either approach, whether rejecting technology entirely or becoming dependent on it, showed weaker performance under stress. Maria's consistent performance across all events had placed her at the top of the final standings. Her fundamental skills had proven reliable under every condition, while her ability to adapt and maintain precision under stress had set her apart from other competitors. Davis finished in the middle of the pack, his early dominance undermined by his inability to adapt when electronic aids were unavailable. The experience had clearly been educational for him, demonstrating gaps in his skill set that needed attention. The competition's conclusion marked more than just individual achievement. It represented validation for a balanced approach to sniper training that emphasized both technological capability and fundamental skills. The lessons learned would influence Marine Corps doctrine and training for years to come. The scoreboard posted outside the sniper section headquarters drew crowds throughout the evening. Marines studied the results, analyzed the scoring breakdown, and discussed the implications of what they had witnessed. Maria Rodriguez's name sat at the top of the final standings, but the victory represented more than individual achievement. Master Sergeant Kelly called a debriefing session for all participants the following morning. The assembled Marines filed into the briefing room with a mixture of emotions. Some vindicated, others humbled, all having learned valuable lessons about the balance between technology and fundamental skills. Yesterday's competition revealed some important truths about modern sniper training, Kelly began, his weathered face showing the satisfaction of a successful educator. The results weren't about proving one approach superior to another, but about demonstrating the importance of complete skill development. He gestured to the projected scoreboard, showing final standings. Rodriguez's victory wasn't achieved because she rejected modern technology, but because she never allowed technology to replace fundamental skills. Her performance remained consistent when equipment failed because she had alternative methods available. Maria felt a mixture of pride and relief. The victory validated her approach, but more importantly, it demonstrated that traditional skills remained relevant in modern warfare. She had proven that technological advancement didn't have to come at the expense of basic military competencies. Davis, Kelly continued, addressing the Marine who had started as the presumed favorite. Your early performance was excellent, demonstrating the capabilities of modern equipment when conditions are optimal. Your struggles when equipment failed showed areas where additional training is needed, not failures of character or ability. Davis nodded, his expression showing thoughtful acceptance rather than the frustration that had marked his performance during the competition. Master Sergeant, I understand now that I have become too dependent on my equipment. I need to develop backup skills for when technology isn't available. Exactly right, Kelly replied. Technology should enhance human capabilities, not replace them. The best snipers will be those who can use every available tool while maintaining the ability to function when those tools aren't available. Corporal Williams raised his hand. Master Sergeant, How do we balance training time between learning new technology and maintaining traditional skills? There's only so much time available for training. It was an excellent question that got to the heart of modern military training challenges. With advancing technology creating new capabilities regularly, training time was increasingly devoted to learning complex systems. This often came at the expense of practicing fundamental skills that remained essential during equipment failures. That's the challenge facing military training across all specialties, Kelly acknowledged. We need to ensure that advancement doesn't come at the expense of core competencies. The competition showed that Marines with strong fundamentals can adapt to new equipment more easily than those who learn technology without understanding underlying principles. The discussion continued for over an hour, with Marines sharing observations and lessons learned from their experience. Several themes emerged: the importance of redundant capabilities, the value of manual calculation skills, and the need for training that stressed both technological and traditional approaches. Maria found herself in the unusual position of being asked for her opinions by Marines who had previously dismissed her methods. The competition had given her credibility that years of successful combat deployments had somehow failed to provide. Rodriguez asked Staff Sergeant Morrison, "What would you recommend for Marines transitioning to advanced equipment? How do we maintain traditional skills while learning new systems?" "I think the key is understanding why traditional methods work before learning how technology can improve them." Maria replied, "If you understand wind reading, range estimation, and ballistic calculation manually, you can better evaluate whether your electronic systems are giving you accurate information." She paused, considering her experience over the past week. Technology should be a tool that makes you more effective, not a crutch that makes you helpless when it fails. The competition showed that Marines who understand both approaches are most effective overall. Master Sergeant Kelly nodded approvingly. "That's going to be the basis for revised training protocols. We'll ensure that Marines master fundamental skills before introducing advanced equipment, and we'll include equipment failure scenarios in all training exercises." The formal debriefing concluded with assignments for follow-up training and recommendations for equipment procurement. The competition had influenced thinking at levels far above the individual Marines who had participated. Word had already reached higher headquarters about the results and their implications. Over the following weeks, Maria found her status at Camp Pendleton completely transformed. The same Marines who had mocked her ancient rifle now sought her advice on traditional shooting techniques. Her approach was no longer seen as outdated but as representing essential skills that complemented modern technology. Davis approached her one afternoon at the range where she was practicing her routine maintenance and training. His attitude had changed completely from their initial encounters, replaced by genuine respect and curiosity. "Rodriguez, I wanted to apologize for my attitude when you first arrived," he said. "I was so convinced that newer equipment was automatically better that I didn't consider the value of traditional skills." Maria appreciated the apology, but was more interested in moving forward constructively. "Davis, your shooting skills are excellent. You just need to develop backup methods for when your primary systems aren't available. It's not about choosing one approach over another." "I've been thinking about that," Davis replied. "Would you be willing to help me learn manual calculation methods? I want to become proficient with traditional techniques while keeping my advanced equipment." This request represented exactly the kind of balanced approach that the competition had highlighted as most effective. Maria agreed to help, and over the following weeks, she worked with Davis and several other Marines to develop their fundamental skills alongside their technological capabilities. The training sessions were informal but intense. Maria taught range estimation using terrain features, wind reading using natural indicators, and ballistic calculation using manual methods. The Marines brought enthusiasm and dedication that made teaching enjoyable and rewarding. Corporal Williams proved particularly adept at combining traditional and modern approaches. He learned to use his ballistic computer as a verification tool rather than a primary method, developing manual calculations first and then checking them against electronic systems. This approach gave him confidence in his calculations while maintaining backup capabilities. The influence of the competition extended beyond individual skill development. Master Sergeant Kelly implemented new training protocols that emphasized fundamental skills before introducing advanced equipment. equipment failure scenarios became standard parts of all training exercises. Range estimation and manual calculation skills were given equal emphasis with technological proficiency. Maria received notification that she was being considered for assignment as an instructor at the Marine Corps' Advanced Sniper School. Her performance in the competition, combined with her combat experience and demonstrated teaching ability, made her an ideal candidate for developing the next generation of Marine snipers. The assignment would represent a significant career advancement and the opportunity to influence Marine Corps sniper training on a broader scale. It would also vindicate her belief that traditional skills remained essential in modern warfare. 3 months after the competition, the Marine Corps issued new guidelines for sniper training and equipment procurement. The guidelines emphasized the importance of maintaining fundamental skills while incorporating advanced technology. Equipment selection would consider reliability and simplicity alongside performance specifications. Maria's influence on these policy changes was significant but unofficial. Her approach had demonstrated that technological advancement didn't require abandoning traditional skills, and that the most effective snipers would be those who mastered both approaches. The new protocols required all snipers to demonstrate proficiency in manual calculation methods before being certified on advanced equipment. Training exercises would routinely include equipment failure scenarios to ensure Marines could function effectively when technology wasn't available. Equipment procurement decisions would balance advanced capabilities with reliability and maintainability. The assumption that newer technology was automatically superior was replaced with more nuanced evaluations that considered operational requirements and failure modes. Maria's M40A1 remained her primary weapon, but she also became proficient with modern systems as part of her instructor preparation. The experience confirmed her belief that understanding fundamental principles made adapting to new equipment easier and more effective. The rifle that had been mocked as an ancient antique became a symbol of the value of traditional skills in modern warfare. It represented not rejection of progress, but the importance of maintaining core competencies that remained essential when advanced systems failed. Davis became one of Maria's most successful students, developing strong fundamental skills while maintaining his expertise with advanced equipment. His transformation from skeptic to advocate demonstrated that experienced Marines could adapt their approaches when shown the value of balanced training. The competition's aftermath created lasting changes in how the Marine Corps approached sniper training and equipment decisions. The balance between technology and tradition became a central consideration in all related policies and procedures. Maria's assignment to the instructor position was confirmed 6 months after the competition. Her new role would allow her to influence the training of hundreds of future Marine snipers, ensuring that the lessons learned from her experience would benefit the entire Corps. The story of the competition spread throughout the military community, becoming a case study in the importance of maintaining fundamental skills while embracing technological advancement. It challenged assumptions about the relationship between tradition and progress in military training. Years later, Marines would refer to the Rodriguez principle when discussing the balance between technology and traditional skills. Her demonstration that old methods retained value in modern warfare influenced training across multiple military specialties. The ancient rifle continued to serve effectively, proving that technological advancement didn't automatically obsolete proven systems. It became a reminder that in military affairs, newer wasn't always better, and that effectiveness mattered more than novelty. Maria's vindication was complete, but more importantly, the Marine Corps had learned valuable lessons about training, equipment, and the enduring importance of fundamental military skills in an age of advancing technology.